Hey, how's it going? I'm Ron.
I'm Zach.
We're from Widetrack, and we're here to talk about our influences. And this week, we want to get into the Beatles. It's high time we talked about the Beatles. Most influential band that's ever existed. I'm just going to say that. I doubt that could be argued
Against.
Yeah. So I discovered the Beatles when I was a young man, probably 7 or 8 years old, and the Beatles cartoon was on TV. It was hilarious, and it featured all the songs. Anybody, you could find them on YouTube. They're great.
Actually, they have a lot of their stuff kind of protected, so it's
protected?
very difficult to find it on YouTube, but if you look hard enough.
Yeah, you know what we're talking about. So recently Zach and I have been watching the Beatles Anthology documentary, and if you haven't seen that, even if you're just a slight Beatles fan, it's fantastic. It's so exhaustive and comprehensive, and just shows you, the first thing that strikes me about it, watching them talk about their music, is how down to earth they remained throughout all of their legend. They just always had their feet on the ground. They were very, just grounded individuals. And so, as Zach's been getting into the music, everybody's got their kind of favorite Beatles thing, and for me, for the longest time, it was the early years. I just loved their pop hits. I think their melodies and their songs were so infectious. I loved that stuff growing up, but as I got older, I delved deeper into their catalog, and Zach and I are kind of in a similar place right now with the Beatles as far as the stuff that he's finding that he's enjoying is kind of where I'm at these days.
And most of it, most but not all, was of my own will.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, hey, this song's really cool. I don't know, man. It's cool.
Yeah, usually I just kind of, hey, check this out, and he goes on his own little safari and comes back and says, here's what I'm feeling, and
he'll of course say
but that's for another time. So anyway, Zach, you said the other night that you kind of came into the Beatles, like your main thing with the Beatles is the Rubber Soul period, on and on. Do you want to kind of give a little bit on that?
Why, of course. Most of Rubber Soul I'm not too familiar with. However, songs like Norwegian Wood and Nowhere Man are, of course, wonderful songs that could not possibly be missed. There's one that I'm forgetting on that album.
Michelle?
Is that on Rubber Soul?
I think so. I think Michelle is.
All right, well, if Michelle's on Rubber Soul.
It's difficult to remember sometimes. That the sessions kind of go over into the next album and such, but that's right around the time period.
Well, that song's great. I'm a big fan of that one as well. And then a lot of stuff off Revolver, Taxman, Eleanor Rigby. Stuff on the second side of the album.
I'm Only Sleeping.
It's another great one.
Tomorrow Never Knows.
Tomorrow Never Knows is an awesome song. Onward from that, there are not too many off of Sgt. Pepper that I'm a fan of.
That's funny. Sgt. Pepper is regarded as, and it is a pivotal album. It's like the quintessential 60s era album, fashion-wise and time-wise. But we gave that album a listen to yesterday, and I know this is not going to be a popular opinion, but
compared to all their other work, it is lesser on the scale.
It's got quite a bit of filler on it, in my opinion, but it closes strong with Day in the Life, one of their greatest songs of all time. And then after that was
Magical Mystery Tour, which is,
we are in agreement. That's our personal favorite Beatles album.
Kind of hard to say though, because it's the Beatles.
Yeah.
And how can you possibly pick a favorite?
At the end of the day, that's the wonderful thing about music. You really don't have to pick.
choose.
You can just enjoy it all and enjoy what you want, and so
Be picky. But a lot of stuff off Magical Mystery Tour. I'm not a big fan of what are the two songs in the track 2 and 3.
oh, yep,
I can't
Blue
remember.
Jay Way and Flying,
Yeah.
But damn,
it is close to
the
home.
rest of it is just so good.
Perfect.
Penny Lane, Strawberry Field, Baby You're a Rich Man, Hello Goodbye,
And the Walrus.
and the Walrus, Magical Mystery Tour, Fool on the Hill, All You Need Is Love. How could anyone say that that's not one of their best albums? What a fantastic album that is. And from there,
You've got the White Album.
the White
which
Album.
There aren't too many extremely memorable things on it.
The White Album is a favorite of a lot of rock stars. Kurt Cobain and the like just rave about the White Album. The White Album is known for its diversity and for the Beatles just totally shattering the mold as to what was expected of them. And it was an important album, and it was a double album. So they got criticized at the time for it for being too wide a range and too long. But as Paul McCartney said, it's the Beatles' White Album. I mean, you can't criticize it. And far be it from us to think we're high and mighty enough to criticize the Beatles. We're just talking about personal influence, and you can make your own determinations, and that's the wonderful thing about music. Everybody has their own thing, blah, blah, blah. So White Album does have some real gems on it, though.
Blackbird.
Blackbird is some of Paul McCartney's nicest guitar playing. Paul McCartney doesn't get regarded a lot as a guitar player. Julia, which John Lennon wrote about his mother, is just a beautiful song. And then, you know, the quintessential birthday song, the Beatles' Birthday, and Happiness is a Warm Gun, and Back in the USSR, and Glass Onion, and all that stuff.
My personal favorite off of the album, Revolution 9.
The Revolution 9.
Almost closing it.
Yeah.
Second to last track.
There was something about the Beatles being influenced by outside substances that really opened the dimensions of their music, and I'll just kind of
Leave it there.
we'll leave it there. It's a very noticeable difference once that came into the music, though. From White Album, the next thing is the last two albums, which kind of shared the sessions.
Yeah, they're the same album, kind of divided into two different groups, really. So, on Abbey Road, Thou Shall Let It Be, the final album of the Beatles, as we'll call it, has plenty of beauties and gems and wonderful songs. What are some that come to your mind?
Oh yeah, you know, Let It Be starts off strong. I mean, two of us, John and Paul, doing some of their best harmonies, and just there's something very wistful about that song that I really enjoy. And then it goes into Dig a Pony, which is some really far out John Lennon pushing himself as a guitar player and writer.
But even farther out comes the next track, Across the Universe, which is so far out it is Across the Universe.
Yeah, one of my favorite Beatles songs of all time, definitely. Across the Universe is just a beautiful song. Let It Be, of course. Long and Winding Road. At this point, Paul was really the driving force in the band. George was coming on real strong as a songwriter, and he kind of wanted to be going that. You could feel they wanted to kind of
split ways.
The Beatles had worn thin on them. All the restrictions of living that life as a Beatle. They were all feeling the need to explore as individual entities, as songwriters and stuff. And it was, the session started out real difficult, but they brought in the keyboardist, Billy Preston, and he kind of pumped new life into the band, and they had a lot of fun making those last two albums. And his playing on those is just fantastic. And as you get from Let It Be to Abbey Road, you've got some of the best music in rock and roll of all time. I mean, Come Together and Oh Darling and
I Want You.
I Want You. Oh my God, what a great
What
song.
a wonderful song.
Soundgarden covered that riff to close out their shows back in
1995.
Yeah, it was, wow, something else. And George Harrison was, I mean, he had, you know, between the White Album and Abbey Road, he had a string of While My Guitar Gently Weeps and Good Day Sunshine and Something, and you know, he was
Here
just
Comes the Sun.
Here Comes the Sun. I mean, George Harrison was just blooming. So it was, you know, and as we all know, the Beatles broke up in 1970 after only 7 years together.
And after the first year becoming the biggest thing in England,
Yeah.
and after second or third, I think they went to America.
Yeah, it's amazing to think of what they accomplished in 7 years. Like, the Beatles existed for 7 years. I mean, they were together before then, but as a recording band, touring band, 7 years. They put all that music out.
And the end of those 7 years, most of the time period, they were just studio musicians that weren't really touring anymore after an incident happened when touring in the Philippines. They kind of decided,
that's right.
That's enough of that. We're
yeah, before
bit shot.
It's funny when you say that Rubber Soul was kind of where you kind of really started getting into. That's when the Beatles decided we're
studio musicians.
We're done with touring. We're not touring anymore. We're going to be studio musicians.
The worst thing you can do as a musician is limit yourself, and when in a studio, it is very easy to not limit yourself and kind of make your ideas come alive, which I think is one of the...
It was a conscious thing for them to say, okay, now we're not limited by what we're able to play
on
live.
stage,
So we will just do whatever we want in the studio. If anybody has an idea, anybody wants to play that idea. Paul played drums on some stuff. They just became this fully studio band, and we all benefited from it so greatly. And then, you know, once the Beatles had released all their albums, of course, there were a lot of compilations and stuff, and which was good for them because they had released a lot of singles in the early days, all through their career, that weren't on the albums, that were huge radio hits. So something,
Hey Jude.
Yeah, Hey Jude isn't on a Beatles album. It was a single, and there's a lot of songs like that. Day Tripper wasn't on a Beatles album. You know, that's the very interesting thing about their careers. They were a singles-oriented band
one more
who
single.
became much more artistic. So
Yeah, Don't Bring Me Down either. That's...
Don't Let Me Down. Don't Let Me Down. One of my favorites. Oh my God, that's a great song. Yeah, we could just go on and gush about the Beatles all day long. You know, so as far as influencing our music, the Beatles are just, you know, for me personally, they are an example of just work. Just work your butt off, and be serious about your work. But there's a way to have fun with it too. Be serious about the work, but not so serious about yourself. You know, and that's a very relieving philosophy for guys like us, I guess. So
What's awesome about the Beatles is not only do they influence us, but they also influence the people that influence us, and the people that influence the people that influenced us.
Yes, indeed. That is a real good observation there. Yeah, I once read a little blurb that said the Beatles' influence is incalculable, and I don't think it can be put any clearer than that. They're pervasive. They are everywhere. You can't avoid the Beatles. If you're a musician, you need the Beatles in your DNA. That you'll only benefit from it, even if it's just to understand the Beatles. So
just to say, hey, they were the first of their kind, and people in that time were really wanting something.
Yeah, and a lot of people
fill the
weren't
gap.
writing their own music back in those days. You know, and the Beatles, they said that they were influenced by artists who were writing their own music, because that's what they really wanted to do, and they had to prove themselves with the record company that they were involved in. And George Martin was instrumental in raising that bar, saying, okay, let me see some songs. And they finally, with Please Please Me, George Martin said, wow, you guys have a #1 hit. And it did indeed go to #1, and from there he let them off the chain, and they just blossomed as songwriters and artists. And it's so inspiring, that the thing about it is, there's in the Beatles anthology thing, George said at one point, he said, I didn't have as much time as a songwriter when I came into the band as John and Paul did, so they had written all of their bad songs. And that really made me think about before the first Widetrack album, there were so many songs I wrote that I just cringe about, and some that are on the first. But you think about, as an artist, you try to you just got to keep working. You got to keep writing, because the more you do,
eventually you'll kind of have a hidden filter in your brain that says, "Ah, it sucks. Don't do that. Don't even think about that idea."
Yeah, there's a point where you'll say,
but I wouldn't know about
I'm not
that.
even ashamed of my bad stuff, in terms of, well, hey, I tried. It's not. It wasn't successful, but at least it's not like that older bad stuff 200 songs ago. And so you could see with George Harrison, once he got into writing his good stuff, it was like wildfire, and it took off. And we're always looking for that, like, oh, okay, let's just keep writing, and maybe eventually we'll, as a band, we will hit that stride. And it's exciting to think about that, and that's why most musicians, I think, they get addicted to it. They're just looking for that next song that's, oh man, I know there's a good one up ahead if we just keep going. So anyhow, that's where our head's been
that
lately.
actually reminds me of Keith Emerson from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. He stated that every time he writes something good, he kind of gets all happy about it, so he kind of lives off that high of writing good stuff.
Yeah,
and it keeps him going.
Yeah, that is an exciting thing, and with Zach in the band now, we have the new album. It's been written for a while, and we've just been recording it, so we're looking forward to going through this whole cycle of getting the album out and playing for people, and really getting ourselves rehearsed and a lot of performances under our belts, so that when we go to write the next album, we will be doing it as a unit. And everybody's so excited about this, this path ahead. And so all these bands and that we're sharing a desire
not to repeat
hear
ourselves, but they're cool.
Yeah, they're really giving us some inspiration here. So.
And we think they're cool.
Yeah.
And that's what will make us cool. Yeah.
We'll be cool one day. Or maybe not. Anyhow, we appreciate you guys kind of putting up with our ballyhoo, tomfoolery, monkey shines, hijinks, and all around madcap ramblings. So, stay tuned for some new music coming your way very soon. And keep on rocking.